Welcome, everyone, to this podcast. My name is Judith Maral. I'm your host today on the GOF' Festival. So that is the Grote Opdracht, and in English, the Great Commission Festival, which has started on the 26th of September and ends sadly today, on the 28th. The theme was involvement and connection in the mission. They talk about bringing new life to churches, to how to start new churches, and also how to go about church plants. And today, one of the speakers who took place, we gave one of the workshops, is going to be our guest, and he's going to present himself. Please, would you present yourself and tell what you do?
So I'm Adrian Peck. I'm one of the lecturers at Newbold College. So I teach in the practical theology or pastoral pathway.
Okay.
We look at connecting what is learnt in the other pathways in terms of theology. So we have systematic and biblical, but we put that into practice and connect our theology to real life, to what's going on in the world. And of course that includes training pastors, and we do some very straightforward training. So we train pastors to chair meetings and to do pastoral counselling and care. But we want pastors to be able to theologically reflect, because it's not possible to be able to train someone to deal with every single situation that comes their way. So it's more about giving them the tools to say, okay, this is what happened, and this is how I'm going to make my way forwards in a systematic but theologically informed way. So that's the program that I generally get involved with.
Okay. Can you give us an example on how that would look for a pastor, for example? How would you bring that in practical way for him? So what would you teach to bring him, to give him the tools? Do you have some example maybe for that?
So, for instance, in the workshop, we were just discussing music, which is a very hot topic, very contentious topic sometimes in churches. So how do you make your way forward from that? Well, first of all, you start with the question of what is happening. And the answer to that question could vary greatly, couldn't it? But it could be that the young people are saying we need to have a different form of music.
Yes.
And then you would investigate that and think, okay, what's going on? What do the other generations think, and where are they coming from? And then the next question you ask, well, why is that happening? And then you're looking at answering the question in terms of the generational differences, how culture's influencing things. Yes, so generally from that perspective. The third question we want them to ask and answer is, what should be happening? And that's where more of the theological engagement comes in. What does Scripture say about worship?
Yes.
So we know that Scripture would suggest that worship's not just about what happens inside a church building during a church service, but worship is a way of life.
Yes.
And we can have some broader understanding of worship that is, for instance, theocentric. So it's about centering on God. It's about understanding God in God's Trinitarian fullness.
Yes.
So we look at those sort of principles.
Yes.
And then we then ask, the final question is, what are we going to do? And based on the answers to the previous three questions, we integrate them and think, okay, this is how we're going to take this forwards.
Yes.
So that might be one example.
Okay. So you mentioned that you use that about music in your workshop. What else did you talk about in the workshop?
So in the workshop, we were talking about revitalizing churches.
Yes.
And I started off by asking the group that was there, or we explored together, when we say church revitalization, what do we mean by church?
Yes.
And what do we mean by revitalization? Because often it's assumed we know what we mean by church.
Yes.
So we explored the church in terms of its New Testament models and the fact that it's a rich model overall. It can be the people of God. It can be is described as a letter, a disciple, a group of disciples. So understanding that you can't put the concept of church into a box. But primarily also understanding that church is a place that is formed of people in whom the Spirit dwells.
That's true.
And then we looked at revitalization and definitions of revitalization. Mainly, we looked at it from the perspective of values, and so we explored the values that the group held together. We looked. I think they came up with 20 or so values, really rich values. Unity, good food was one. Good, excellent worship, intentional caring, and then I took the group through what they call a values discovery process. Because it's all very well to say, well, these are the values we want, but actually, what values do we have?
Yes.
And that's where the conversation gets a bit awkward. Because we can say we're welcoming or we're accepting of others, but actually, what's the experience of that? So in that values discovery process, it's about understanding the values that we might have that we probably ought to consider, maybe we need to leave behind, and also the values that we aspire to. So we were thinking about that. And this morning particularly, we were workshopping the value of acceptance and the value of having the church as family, valuing the church as family.
Yes.
We can say that, but what does it mean? And what does it look like in practice?
Yes.
So we went through that process, and it's
what
not
does
so
that
easy.
mean? What does it mean to revitalize something? If somebody is laying down, you have to bring back life to that person. You would do CPR. How do you do CPR in the church?
It's an interesting way of looking at it. I think it's the process that I presented, the way I help people understand it, is you move from understanding where you are now, which is more than just a gut reaction, anecdotal, and then understanding where you want to go to. And Brendan happily stepped in and talked to them about vision before I got here, because I was late with the flight. And then it's how you get from A to B, from where you are now to move towards your vision. And I think the main mechanism for that might not be what you expect, which is conversation.
Yes.
Spirit-led, prayerful conversation. So it's vertical conversations and horizontal conversations. Because often we know what's going on in our congregations, but we don't talk about it in a healthy way.
That is true.
And I'm more interested in that process than I am actually in what comes out at the end, because I think that will
lead it to the end.
It will lead to that.
Are our pastors equipped for that?
Certainly, we equip pastors for that in Newbold in the college.
Okay, and that's what you give them as practical lecture. Is that how you?
So when they do the theological reflection I was talking about, we introduced that from the first year that students study at Newbold, and then we increased the competency of that all the way through the process. We actually have a specific module called Healthy Churches, Revitalizing and Planting. So yes, we talk the new pastors through that.
Yes. You said one thing in Adrian 10, what I read on Newbold, that the answer, knowing God, is by asking questions. That's how we connect to God, instead of thinking that we know all the answers. Is that what you mean when you said the communication is to have the communication first with God, vertically and then horizontally? Is that what you mean when you said that? I don't know if you remember what you said.
No, I don't. Actually, I think it's not. It's not just to say my perspective. It's not just vertical and then you do the horizontal. I think it's integrated.
Both. Okay.
Yeah, it's yes, because it's not only that we think we know all the answers.
Yes.
We don't realise what our own positions are in terms of our biases and our assumptions and our presumptions. And I think it's only through conversations that we're able to expose those.
That's true. And how do we get those healthy conversations? Because we come with our own values. We think that we know those answers. We have those answers. And we come with the culture, culture background. We have our pictures of God, by which we make our decisions. How do we get those healthy conversations?
I think it's about setting the guidelines, setting the protocol, if you like, for how we're going to, up front. And it can be as simple as saying, we're not going to interrupt, we're not going to talk over each other, we're going to really listen and really listen, actively listen to each other. And it's about being non-judgmental. So all those good things, that counsellors use when they're talking to people, I think that setting those out as our stall, setting those out as the basis upon which the conversation take place at the very beginning is maybe one way to progress.
Yes. So then you will have those conversations, talk about what is happening in the church. So do you think that we would need somebody to start off that, or are the pastors the one to create that platform? Who is to start those conversations?
I think the pastor can do it. But we believe in the priesthood of all people. That's an underlying principle for us, a foundational principle for us. And I think, it can be different voices within a congregation that can start generating those conversations. And sometimes they just come from a place of discontentment.
Yes. But isn't it that too late when you get there? Because by the time your emotions will be then leading to have those healthy conversations.
There's a few theories in terms of how change happens. So the two main ways that change happens, it's suggested, is through inspiring people. So you could take that route before discontentment starts. The more likely way that change happens is through discontentment.
All right. Okay.
It's through being, actually, I think we can do this better.
All right.
No, I think that we're lacking in this area, or the people asking that question, but at the same time doing so constructively, because it's very easy to criticize. I think that's where you're coming from. Maybe it's very easy to criticize. No, we need to do something about this more than we need to moan about it.
Yeah. And so in your workshop, you talked about how to have the communication. What else did you cover?
So then we looked at some tools that can be used to help in the revitalization process and all generate those conversations. So one was the values discovery process. And then there are various tools out there, Adventist Growing Young, Natural Church Development, that you can survey the members, get real data, not just what people's opinions are, as they get together on a Sabbath afternoon and just come up with what they think the church should do. That gives you a report, and then you can respond to the report, and it can show you what your strengths and your weaknesses are, and you can work from there.
And so the survey, for example, are there basics that needs to be in those surveys? What should be a main question in those surveys? So
there are official surveys. So there are various schemes. There's ICOR, Natural Church Development, Adventist Churches Growing Young. The survey's already there, so you don't have to do that. You just simply run through the survey and then see the results.
Yes, and so we have the union here in the Netherlands has once a year or almost twice a year that is to send the survey through all the churches to find out. Is that something that needs to happen locally? Is that what you mean?
In some form or another, yes. To get away from just opinions.
That's true. So
and
to have actual facts.
Strong voices. We all have groups with strong voices, and those voices that are on the margins that might not be heard. So by actually having that information, you can understand more broadly where a congregation is at, and then go from there.
And is there something that in the workshop that happened that inspired you?
I think the group that was attending were motivated towards change.
Yes.
And that is always inspiring. Because sometimes you think that perhaps people are just happy with the way things are, even though they were really engaged in trying to wrestle with the issues and to understand how to respond to the challenges that they see in their congregations. And that is always inspiring.
And was there a red line in why the church was not growing from the perspective of those participants?
Now that could be a question that could take a while to answer, and I'm trying to think how to answer it politically well. as human beings, we're resistant to change, aren't we?
That's true.
We are, and as we get, allegedly, as we get older, we're even more resistant to change. I think one of the issues is that we start off doing something for good reasons. We start church services at 10 o'clock or whatever. And then as it goes through time, it becomes tradition, and then it becomes set in concrete. And then it almost becomes a belief that we must start church at 10 o'clock. And that, trying to get out of that cycle, we must use this hymn book. We must have the scripture reading. Yes, we must have the scripture reading here and not here. We must stand for this sort of music and not that sort of music. So, but that's where that builds into the congregation's identity. This is who we are, and that's one of the challenges we have. Whereas if you start to have these conversations, you can challenge those existing paradigms, those existing ways of working, and then think, well, actually, what are we trying to achieve here? Beyond just doing what we think our identity is at the moment.
And so changing can be complicated, can be painful. How do you change without moving the structure of the church? There is, looking at, for example, young people, the music part, they want to maybe involve the youthly music, I would call it. How do you change without changing the structure of the church? How do you let people be heard when you hear them? So 2 questions at the same time, but how do you get there?
It's interesting you said maintaining the structure. Can I come back and ask you a question? What do you mean by structure?
Yeah, the Seventh-day Adventist structure. So the basic, the principles that we have.
Yeah, I think we think there's more structure there than there is.
Okay.
In a sense. For example, in the church manual, it gives an example of a long and short church service. It doesn't say you must do this service.
Okay.
So I think there's more fluidity and room for creativity within Adventism than perhaps we are conscious of.
So is the concrete what the forefathers used to think church should be, or is it our structure?
Every church in every generation is actually responding to their own particular context. Some do it more naturally than others. Some do it quicker than others.
Yes.
So we don't worship like the pioneers did in the 1800s. We don't worship like they did in Corinth or in the churches in Galatia in the New Testament. We don't dress like the Greco-Romans did. We don't eat the same food. We don't have the same customs, the same family structures. And so there's always been this movement. I think one of the people in my workshop said, "Oh, we need to get back to being a movement rather than an institution." So yeah, there is that fluidity there, and I think we do need to respond to where we are at in terms of our place in society, the way we think and the way we feel, because you always have to do that, because God meets us where we are, and we need to meet others and in fact ourselves where we are.
So do I understand? Because it seems like we need to change a lot. Or do we need to change a lot? That should be the question.
That should be the question. Well, that's kind of, what's the phrase, revolution or transformation, move a little bit or move drastically.
Yes.
I think we need to be led by God to answer that question.
That's a good one.
I did give them the quote from Ellen White where she says, "We have many things to learn and many, many things to unlearn."
That is true.
And the way that sentence is structured, we have more to unlearn than to learn. So maybe that you do need some drastic changes, but that's an uncomfortable thing to think about.
Because change is painful. It gives you comfort. It gives you security. Changing to something that is unknown is kind of scary. And as we are going further with especially the youth, we want to take them along with us. And I think like you said, being in that concrete, we are not taking them along with that, where they are at another level, I think, than we are. How do you bring that back to the pastor and in your workshop? How do you see that as a, how do you implement that, I would say?
So I was promoting conversations. It's not just conversations with the existing leadership in a church, for example. It is conversations with young people. And really listening, and even conversations with people in the community. How do we understand what the needs are of the people in the community?
Yes.
How do we know where they're coming from unless we talk to them? And I don't think that actually, talking about surveys, is going around and doing a survey.
No.
That is going around and relating to people and engaging with them and listening to their trials and tribulations, triumphs and joys.
Connecting.
Connecting, and the same thing with young people. That they think differently from my generation.
Yes.
But that's okay, because I thought differently from my parents and my grandparents' generation. That's just natural. Yeah, it's sort of obvious thing to do, but it seems to be so difficult. It doesn't feel obvious, does it?
It doesn't look obvious. Yes, because how do you, as church is part of your life, how do you get out of your daily busy life to be able to do that and still be there on Sabbath, and then to your duties as, for example, a pastor, you are working 24/7 already. So does it mean that as a pastor it needs to pay more attention to the youth, or?
As a pastor, you're pastoring everyone.
Yes.
But certainly there should be an intentional focus on youth. For obvious reasons, that youth are often leaving our churches. They're going off to higher education and then often not coming back to the congregation. Although there are changes in the current Gen Z, there's more church attendance there. But there's always sensitivity around youth.
Yes.
But all I think that comes down to is that discomfort with change.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say something more to that, which is that Christianity fundamentally is about change.
It's about change.
Because we're being transformed.
That is true.
Made into coming to the full maturity of Christ.
Yes.
It is a movement it is a movement. It is all about transformation. And sometimes I think we forget that.
We forget that. That's true, because I don't think we know that it is fluid, that our serving God and our way of doing is fluid, like you mentioned before. So GOF', the Great Opdracht Festival, I think that is one way speaking to the people about revitalization. I'm always saying that word wrong. What other ways are there to bring this message abroad to other people, to make sure that the church members know about that?
Obviously doing something like this,
Yes.
I guess. I think it is about spreading the word. Actually can spread naturally, can't it? The people that have attended this this festival, hopefully, and I said this to them specifically, I hope these conversations continue, not just among you who are here, but take them into your church, into your congregations. And for some of them, that's going to be a challenge.
Yes.
I'm being honest, that's going to be a challenge because they don't want to have that conversation. But it's a ground up movement, I think.
That's true.
Not to make it top down. I'm not so sure that you need to revitalize, you need to change. That's never going to happen, is it?
But you have to want it as well.
You do, but that's where the Spirit comes in, and the idea that Christianity is a transformatory thing. We can't. None of us believe correctly. None of us behave fully correctly. So, sorry, I should need to rephrase that. None of us believe all that we need to believe and the way we need to believe it. So that there is always that need to learn and to investigate and to grow and mature in our understanding. But at the same time, you need to let things go.
Yes.
And so when we were talking about values, as I said, you have to discover what values you want to aspire to, but you also have to discover the values you want that you need to leave behind.
Yes. That's going to create some conversations. And indeed, if we, like you mentioned before, if we have it in a safe environment, and when we set those ground rules to able to have those, what do you expect after the workshop that you are giving. You said you would like them to continue. Is there anything else you would say that should need to happen next to that, next to the conversation?
Well, I was specifically asked to give the people that were participating in the workshops tools, so I have done that. And I hope they go away and think about, well, how can we use this tool in our particular context? I ended up particularly focusing on the values thing. I think just exploring your values, because they're so fundamental, so our actions and our culture are so rooted in our values. They're just exposing those, I think, is hopefully a good way to go.
So that was one of the tools that you gave them. What other tools do you give them?
So I've already mentioned them. So natural church development, so these survey type things, and the mission, vision, and values process. All together. So
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you very much for this conversation, for giving insight on the workshop that you gave to the GOF festival today. We hope to see you next year, because I heard it's going to take place again. Would you be willing to come next year?
if I'm free.
We'll make sure you're free. And if you would come, what other part, knowing that you have tackled these subjects, the tools that you gave them, what other part would you discuss after giving this?
So there are other tools that possibly we could talk about, but also we were going to discuss change management and conflict management.
Yes.
And so there's those sort of approaches that I think would be very useful.
Really useful to do. So there is a part 2 to this, I think.
Possibly, yes.
Yes. All right then. Well, thank you so much, Adrian Peck, for your conversation, for your insight, and I hope to see you next year here, because I'm very curious about the part 2 and how to, especially with the conflict management, and how and to know more about fossil. I heard something about fossil.
Oh, I collect fossils, yes.
I'm so curious about why fossils, actually.
It was a lockdown activity to a degree, because we used to go walking on the beach.
Yes.
And we were living on an island on the south coast of England that has a lot of fossils. Yeah. You could literally walk along the beach and pick up a fossil turtle shell or something, a bit of a fossil turtle shell or something.
Okay, maybe that's a place to visit.
It's a beautiful place.
All right then. Okay. Well, thank you, and I wish you a blessed day and a safe trip back. I hope it's not going to be as bumpy as it was when you came back here.
Thank you.
All right then. Thank you.